Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky coming on to talk to you about the total solar eclipse happening on April 8th, 2024. This is a grand American solar eclipse as this will be shadowing out the North American continent. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the the archetypal picture that this eclipse is painting. I will give you some intuitive messages about the eclipse as well as talk about some of the astrology configurations and what this means for us at a paradigmatic level moving forward. I intend to really answer a lot of questions in this video, as I know that a lot of us are facing immense confusion, mixed signals, and just kind of like ebbing, flowing back and forth, unsure energy right now. And yes, this April 8th total solar eclipse in the sign of Aries on the Aries-Libra axis is going to answer some of these things once and for all. We're going to know a little bit more about our own motivations, and we're going to see, as with all eclipses, that something comes in and something goes out. We will experience some sort of finality. So if you're new to my YouTube channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. I may make some more content about this eclipse. Also, my channel is on Patreon if you want to get some premium content about it over there. You can check out the description box. Anyway, everyone, so first I want to paint for you a little picture of what's going on here on April 8th. So here in the US, or the North American continent in general, but I'll kind of narrow it to the US a little bit. Well, we have a total solar eclipse, so we're going to be in certain places of the US experiencing full totality, which there is an important distinction to be made between a partial solar eclipse and a total solar eclipse. Many people don't know the difference. They just think an eclipse is an eclipse. So in a partial solar eclipse, you're going to have maybe not the entire sun being covered, and this is what we experience most of the time with an eclipse. However, in different places on the globe, certain areas will experience totality. Sometimes this can just be over the ocean, it can be anywhere on the globe, but it's rarer to be in a place where totality is happening, which means it's going to be like full-on darkness. It's going to be a total blocking of the sun. And yes, we have many historic events that have happened during total solar eclipses, battles, wars, major changes in geopolitics, major changes in social cohesion and mental perspectives, okay? Eclipses, especially in areas of totality, demarcate major turning points in human experience. And today I'm going to talk to you about that in important depth, but this feels to me like a very ritualistic kind of solar eclipse that we're going into. And it's not really of our own creation. For example, we have NASA shooting off 3 rockets during the time of totality, and I will link an article below that talks about that. But yes, we will have a rocket shooting off. Of course, Comet 12P and Jupiter will both be visible during the time of totality and during the eclipse. So we've got rockets, we've got a comet, we've got Jupiter. Also CERN, the Hadron Collider, will be going as well. For those of you who know what that is, definitely check it out if you don't know what it is. But it paints a picture, doesn't it? So we have comets, planets, rockets, Hadron Collider, totality, blocking out of the sun. Also a lot of symbolism that is really visceral to consider. For example, in the article that I'll link below, it talks about the NASA rockets, and it talks about the project, which is named after a serpent deity, contrary to the sun deity of Ra in Egyptian mythology. And the NASA project essentially aims to see how the change in temperature that's happening because of the eclipse, because of the sun being blocked out, how that affects certain atmospheric elements and basically some of the impacts. So we're going to be seeing some new science perhaps emerging regarding eclipses and the effects and impacts that they have. But I also am seeing also like the archetype of Ten of Swords. I feel like really grand pictures like this are so archetypal. If you can imagine all of these things happening at once, and if you can imagine like what has been on the table this time leading up to this, it feels to me like a climax point to certain tensions which have been slowly, incrementally rising. And this sort of climax point when we have this total solar eclipse with the rockets, with the comet, with Jupiter, with CERN, with all of these different things kind of generating a constellation of energetic motion. I feel that this essentially is kind of like opening up a new portal of totality for some people, where it's like, okay, this has been the experience for so long. This has been the build-up, the slow build-up, and finally we have this element of totality, or we have this element of opening, and this sort of archetypal grandeur, which to me is reminiscent of the Ten of Swords or the Death archetype. Meaning that we are about to end a certain way of being, and we're about to have a new beginning. Of course, the solar eclipse is happening in the sign of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. And I will put some charts on the screen, and I have a lot of things to talk to you about that as well. But we have so much in Pisces, okay? Leading up to this, we've had a Venus-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. We've had Saturn in Pisces. And we were very recently in Pisces season, of course. So there's so much weight in that era of finality, in that very sacred, ritualistic 12th house energy. But it's now transitioning to the first house, and then you have this grandeur, archetypal kind of shift climax point happening during this total solar eclipse, with all of this different symbolism happening, which says to me that we are about to step into a major new beginning. However, if you have been checking out some of my Patreon content where we've been talking about the 2026 Neptune, Saturn, and Aries, it feels to me that that is our sort of new beginning point. But maybe this Aries total solar eclipse is starting to reform or regenerate certain elements, which will then support a greater new beginning then. The one thing that I am feeling with this total solar eclipse is a sort of like rushed new beginning, or I'm feeling in some way that we have a certain desperate push, or a certain like need to like really force a beginning here, which of course the sign of Aries can be very forceful. It's like cardinal fire. There's definitely a feeling of like a match being struck here, or some type of like fire being started. And I think that that's going to be happening and experienced by pretty much everybody in some way. But just having the weight of Saturn and Neptune still in Pisces is creating a lot of material relevance in the previous story, or a lot of energy in the past. So it's kind of, yes, a very totalistic period of time where you have many energetic remnants that are relevant in the past experience, yet such a deep pushing internal need to experience something one has never experienced. So it's like balancing both of these polarities. And yes, when you have two polarities like this, that is alchemy, that is the creative life force. And I feel like this total solar eclipse is kind of it's one of those alchemical results of holding so much polarity. And that also means that this can be like chaotic and very explosive and very difficult to harness as well. And I don't think it's about harnessing this energy, but certainly with some of the things going on right now, it kind of appears that there's something that people are very desperate to harness. I do feel that this is an eclipse that indicates some degree of desperation. And I also feel that it indicates that, again, being on the Aries-Libra axis, that a story has ended, and a lot of us are needing to experience new regions, new travel, new life in general. So this feeling of like new life, or new planting, new seeds, new geographies, new weather patterns. There's a very strong feeling of stagnation for a lot of people with this Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus that we're also having applying to conjunction on April 17th. So, and the Comet 12P is also around the area of Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Taurus, a sidereal Aries, but I believe it will be between like 9 and 12 degrees of tropical Taurus. So it's going to be very interesting to look at. I mean, I'm not sure that the comet will be visible with the naked eye. I've done some research and can't quite find a solid answer on that. I know with binoculars it's visible, and with cameras as well it can be visible. And of course, again, the total solar eclipse happening in Aries, so that means like kind of right by it is going to be Jupiter and the comet. And I just feel like this speaks of kind of harvesting a new version of ourselves. It's like Aries and Taurus together It's really requesting us, if I'm looking at it intuitively, with the Aries eclipse, right? Eclipse contradicts the natural energy of the sign itself. So if Aries is about new beginnings, if Aries is about the Fool archetype as well, like in the tarot, if Aries is about that sort of primordial cardinal fire masculine energy, the eclipse of this says that we are needing to be more prudent. We're needing to be more careful, perhaps needing to access more of the feminine archetype as opposed to the masculine, perhaps more of the water rather than the fire. And then with the Taurus energy being connected to this eclipse with Jupiter and Uranus there in the comet, again, that's a very sacred fixed earth feminine energy. It's creating a certain spectrum of honor and visibility and connection as we kind of dismantle some of the previous need to push so hard or to force things to happen or to be so extreme with ourselves. So I'm feeling a balm or a soothing energy come through along lines of extremism or lines of forcefulness, lines of militant nature as well. Could be soothed. I'm not going to say that it will be, because I'm also simultaneously feeling like a militant buildup or an incremental kind of expansion, augmentation of certain conflicts. But at an individual level, I feel that the best way to work with this eclipse energy is to soothe some of your own forcefulness or to soothe some of your own need to have something right this second, because I feel like we need to find more relief in some things not yet being manifested. That's what this Aries eclipse is. A very complicated kind of energy. Aries solar eclipse. It's like, it's hard for so many people because it's like knowing what you want, but it's not here or it's not reachable yet. And it's kind of like being in that in-between phase or being in that kind of stagnated or plateaued phase. But I feel that there's a deep relief also in knowing that some of these things haven't happened, in defeat, in loss, in restriction, in reduction, in internalization instead of externalization. We're going to find a lot of solace and soothing healing potential. Now, I do want to go ahead and pull up the chart on the screen if it's not already up, and I'm going to kind of like talk through the complexity of this time, as this is a very complex series of energies that we're dealing with. So first of all, this is also a Chiron eclipse. So if you notice, obviously the sun and moon being totally conjunct, that is creating the eclipse phenomenon itself. Also at 19 degrees, we have Chiron. So Chiron is also covering the sun up here too. So we have this sort of like, I'm going to call it like a collusion between the moon and Chiron. So these are two very subtle, beneath the surface, hidden kind of energies, the moon and Chiron, both in Aries. So we have covert actions here. We have also a duo effect or a working together happening in a very kind of behind the scenes way. Things are like working out off the camera here. Things are working out in a very kind of like psychological way, also with the moon and Chiron. Also notice that Mercury is retrograding back towards this eclipse as well. So while it's not conjunct the eclipse, it has been retrograding back. And another very interesting phenomenon to observe with this chart, if you were to look at it over the past week or so, what you would see is you would see the sun moving towards Chiron and Mercury moving towards Chiron. So it's like the sun and Mercury also moving in on Chiron, with Mercury retrograding back towards Chiron, and then of course the sun advancing towards it. And then you have this eclipse also forming, obviously on April the 8th, moving towards Chiron and conjuncting it, with Mercury still moving back towards it. So does that make sense? How you have kind of Chiron between both the eclipse and Mercury, pulling them essentially towards itself. So there's this feeling also, if we're looking at a point of like quantum physics, I feel that there is some kind of previously unseen hidden element that is pulling the more visible elements toward itself. So there's like a gravitation process happening. There's something with an unexpected, unanticipated source of gravity pulling the larger, more visible elements toward itself. What this means to me at a more mundane level is the unexpected or the unanticipated, the previously hidden, the previously unknown has more gravity than what we've been seeing right in front of us. So it's kind of like being prepared for anything is important here. Also understanding that maybe we don't understand the totality of certain experiences or certain events, and being sort of in a safe and understood scenario where sort of like unexpected events are not so devastating or so difficult to go through, I feel is an important thing to consider with this eclipse. Chiron is the wounded healer, right? Chiron is a minor centaur asteroid, which deals with the sublimation of pain and defeat into the eventual rise or victory, though it's not guaranteed either. So it's like this, in some ways, nebulous state of ascension or nebulous state of elevation that is honestly more philosophical and more about the quest than it is about the actual achievement. So also it's like the nature of the quest or the nature of the goal starts to get more gravity here than even the actual accomplishment or fulfillment of it. So this is a wonderful eclipse to create new goals. It's also a wonderful eclipse to kind of like comprise, combine, or basically integrate multiple goals into one cohesive unit or into one cohesive sphere, if that makes sense, because that's also doing that exact energetic concept that I was just talking about, where it's like Chiron kind of like pulling these two elements together. So for some people, you might have what used to be kind of like antithetical goals or things which you never felt could mix together properly. Well, throughout this time, you can kind of get the right type of environment or the right type of alchemy to actually bring harmony to the previously incohesive or previously unrelated or unconnectable elements, perhaps of yourself or of your external environment. What this also means to me is people combining in ways that they haven't before. So like certain movements or certain goals, certain collective cohesion is going to shift. So you're going to see people starting to work together who never used to work together. You're going to see like unexpected alliances. You're going to see unexpected pregnancies as well. Unexpected, like having like two people that you never thought would have children together coming together here. You could also see mergers, acquisitions. Okay, like, wow, those two companies merged together. It's a very much sort of impulsive or surprising kind of combination here. And also things that you used to think were totally harmonious, things that you used to think were perfect, like, wow, those people are so compatible, or wow, this business model is just so cohesive. These things could kind of turn against, okay? So I've been seeing this happening a few times in my own experience where it's like, wow, I really thought that I saw some type of like connectivity there, but it's like it kind of reaches out and slaps you in the face a little bit. And it's like, no, this is actually not connective. This is only an illusion, or this is only a sort of predetermined, preconceived type of imposed compatibility. So this concept of like imposed compatibility should be something that we're thinking about during this time. And some of also the actions or ideas, or like, what would I even say? Some of the thinking patterns that we implement that result in imposed compatibility. So it's like, I hate this job, but I'm going to tell myself a story about the results of this kind of job that imposes a forced compatibility between me and this job. You see, this is a major error in this new paradigm. This is like very new. I think this is like right with this eclipse coming in, where it's like used to be we would put ourselves through all these different things to like cross a certain bridge or to get to a certain point. It's going to have to kind of make sense at a deeper level now. So I'm seeing things that don't make sense not coming past this point. So this is a very physical manifestation of this eclipse. What I'm seeing is like, I identify so much with this incompatible element of my experience, and now it's gone. How do I react to this? So this is kind of like where people start to identify as like a quote unquote addict, but they're in rehab now, or they've overcome it and they don't have that identity anymore. There's maybe an identity loss with this eclipse, right? First house Aries eclipse, the loss of an identity. Also the healing, right? With Chiron being the wounded healer, like the healing of a previous, like, you know, the lonely person, or the hopeless romantic, or the addict, or the rich person. Okay. The, you know, impoverished person. All of these sort of like blind status elements can kind of be eclipsed out here, and we're left with an empty space. So I do feel that this eclipse leaves a bit of a void. So perhaps someone that you've been talking to for a long time kind of voids out here, and now you get to like play, perhaps, with refilling that with something perhaps more or less compelling. Or perhaps, so I'm seeing breakups. I'm seeing people not knowing what to do with the void. I'm seeing people kind of seek aimlessly or endlessly to fill it, but that's not really the point here. The point is to experience a state of being without a certain identity anymore, or being without a certain person, or without a certain time filler. So we're getting a reduction actually of the filler energy that I've found to be such a threat to a lot of people's greater spiritual path. And this is going to ultimately be very healing, but it can be difficult in the moment. I definitely see a lot of people having to question their identity at the deepest level on account of not having some kind of very like simple minor satisfaction. Okay, that's why I think like addict, for example, was one of the first sort of status connotations that was coming up there, because I definitely kind of see how people right now can't have access to some of the things which have fulfilled them in a very superficial way anymore, and then some very smart people will deprive themselves of these sort of like superficial fulfillments, or these things which are not actually meaningful, or not like really the zest of life. So if you're feeling like a staleness or a stagnation, or if you're feeling like you're out of like really meaningful options, I would take that as an opportunity to release more things from your life, or an opportunity to like, I don't know, just go even crazier with it. Like, okay, there's absence in my life, or there are things that are released now. There's like a void space. I'm going to give even more away. I'm going to disconnect even more. And it shows me a sort of genius in certain people who are challenging themselves and their identities at every level, because this kind of burns out unneeded ego, or it burns out or forces a release of that which is not real or not strong. So that also I feel is happening in this Aries solar eclipse, is there's a reduction or an eclipsing of any type of superficial ego, because Aries is like the lack of superficial ego. Like Aries has not really developed an ego yet. It's the first sign of the zodiac. So the other fire signs, Leo and Sagittarius, are both very correlated with ego. Aries is less so. Aries is more about action. It's more about goals. It's more about direct linear movement. So I could also interpret this eclipse as a complication of movement, or a delinearization. Is that a word? Like making less linear certain paths. But at the same time, with Mercury retrograding back to this point, and eventually going direct back over these degrees, I feel that we're going to at least get an understanding of the exact way that certain paths are going, even if they're not like very straight and understandable. We'll at least know it for what it is. And there's going to be a lot of things happening over these next few weeks, like after this eclipse, that essentially give us a lot of resolution on what it is that we're dealing with, and we get to kind of choose from a more knowledgeable state how to move forward with it. Okay, another element of this eclipse is the fact that Mars and Saturn are applying to conjunction with each other in Pisces. So it's a very debilitated kind of conjunction. Saturn and Mars neither like the sign of Pisces very much. And also Saturn and Mars are together quite a malefic force. So this is a very kind of like negative element of the current sky, which is really generating a lot of need to experience a bad outcome, or a lot of people are feeling like now's the time that they want to spend all of their money, or now's the time that they want to sort of like relapse into some kind of dream or some type of element of themselves that has been too deeply directed inwards. So the inward directed elements of ourselves, the things which we hold against ourselves, the things which we are struggling to properly integrate, the things that rather than releasing, we're just bottling up, are going to be on the table during this eclipse, okay? So it might be very important to take stock of like, what am I bottling up? What like urges, what inner needs, what secrets, what, wants, and also fears am I like locking up rather than releasing? Now, we're very challenged here to release rather than withhold. Do you know what I mean? This is a very subtle energetic action. Like a lot of people can't differentiate between releasing and withholding. So we're going to have to kind of like, for some people, learn the hard way with that here, or just have a final moment of release to truly overcome some of our difficult traits once and for all. Okay, and then just a few more notes on the comet. Some of the pictures of this are beautiful. I'll try to include some in the video. If not, definitely Google some Comet 12P pictures. They're pretty incredible. So what do I feel about this? So this is conjunct the fixed star of Hamal, which is a very like negative, malefic Saturn-Mars star, which is why I'm talking about this after the Mars-Saturn conjunction in Pisces part of the video. So it's another layer of Mars-Saturn energy, this comet passing right by that fixed star. Also, of course, having the solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, which is Mars-ruled. So there's a lot of this Mars-Aries Saturn energy mirroring throughout the heavens right now. So we have a certain like celestial grid, which is really channeling through the energy of the cardinal masculine fire element, as well as the cardinal earth Saturn element. And they can sometimes be juxtaposed to each other. So it's kind of like saying to me again that feeling of having certain like juxtaposed goals or disharmonious situations. That's really going to be worked through a lot during this period of time. Also, I feel that this gives a feeling of urgency to the energy. So it's like that's again the problem with Mars and Saturn is Mars is such an urgent, quick-moving energy, and Saturn is about like waiting and allowing time to work for you. So I feel that this is like what a lot of people are struggling with right now is like, how urgently do I face certain things? Do I let time in the long run work this out, or do I try to step into action and solve this with my own two hands? In some way, we have to do both. We have to know what is appropriate to mess with and what is not. We have to understand what is actually in our control and what is not. And I am feeling that a lot of people get more through allowing the longer term to work in their favor, or through building things over time. Also, because Jupiter is so near this as well and will be visible in the eclipse, I feel that it is going to kind of bring more of a grandiosity to the decisions at hand, and it's going to make things feel like really big and really important. So it's like these small kind of juxtaposed elements get a certain like grandiosity about them, and we're really going to come face to face with our own ego and our own I was going to say like level of contemplation of these events that we're facing and these decisions that we're having to make. And all of that's going to basically be tested and challenged because, again, the eclipse is also on the Aries-Libra axis. And, if we look at the chart, the Libra area only has the south node, and everything is clustered together right in the signs Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. So there is also this feeling of the south node and also Pluto as well over there in Aquarius kind of being disconnected and on looking. So you could also be in that space as well, like kind of like being at a distance from where all of this climax is happening, or like witnessing or bystanding, or kind of like keeping away from some of these inflection points. Feels like a very powerful place to be during this eclipse as well. And finally, there's an element of faith and turnover here. So because Pisces and Aries are so illuminated, oftentimes on that cusp we see faith, spirituality, religion. So there's something of having the faith tested here, also of faith winning, or people stopping certain aspects of their life to like support their faith more. Also, religious divisions, religious conflicts are very likely. Okay, and a lot of that could be the basis for the outcome of this solar eclipse. And of course, we've been seeing like a lot of difficulty with infrastructure. I know that the day I filmed this, there was a huge earthquake in Taiwan. Of course, we've had the bridge collapse as well in the US. We've had various infrastructural challenges. And I feel like that's very correlated with this too, especially with the Mars-Saturn nature, because Saturn is about infrastructure and Mars is about, sometimes having a major test or a trial with that. So I do think that the destruction that we're seeing along these lines right now does carry a significance at a symbolic level to even people who are not going through it. So I would definitely recommend like donating time, money, or energy to helping people in these areas or to assisting here. But also I would definitely take it as a sign that certain bridges are no longer there. So I feel that people have basically burned a lot of bridges in their lives. I feel that things that they used to be connected to can no longer be accessed. So that's probably one of the most important things I could tell you about this eclipse as well, is certain connecting points are no longer here. As a bridge is essentially a connecting point, and you could see a scattered kind of attempt by some people to like reconnect or to reassemble, but like very, very careful and cautious during this time with burning bridges, okay, because they may not be able to be reconstructed. I think that some people may take for granted also some of the connecting points in their lives. People may think that the bridge will always be there, or people may think, even if I cheat on that person, or even if I, just kind of, even if I just do the bare minimum or disconnect or allow confusion to permeate my relationships, it'll still be there. It'll still be fine. I'm seeing a lot of this in the collective consciousness. In fact, this is the thing that I'm feeling most psychically activated by so far in this reading, is this false sense of gratitude, or this false sense of connection being a certain security for people as they don't really contribute in a meaningful way. So what this means is like divorces are very likely here. Breakups are very likely. Also, disappearance, okay, or things just, people aren't there, people aren't responding anymore. Like you have like buildups or climaxes in relationships, and it results in a kind of like non-event rather than a buildup, because the connecting point is not solid, or because there's no real substance holding it up, or perhaps the connecting bolts or hoists are not like as strong as they used to be anymore. So it's a wonderful time for infrastructural investment, and it's also a wonderful time for, I would say, like bridge inspections, okay, or looking at how strong some of the infrastructure is, and then doing this in our own lives, like also the connective tissue of the body, how strong is that? How strong are my relationships? Like I would take this down to a very kind of symbolic level as well, because relationships are bridges. Okay, so when you have a relationship with someone, regardless of the type of relationship that it is, there's you, there's the person, and then there's the bond, which has kind of its own life as well. It's like basically the bridge, and it has to be maintained, it has to be upkept. Otherwise, it's liable to not be strong, or liable to have, some type of stressful event which it can't withstand. So the ability to withstand stressful events, you all, is something that this Aries solar eclipse is going to implant into us as an important area of focus. Because I think that that's actually some of the biggest problem right now that a lot of us are having, is we're working on infrastructure that's not too solid at every single level of your life that you can imagine. And because of that, it's like there's a weakness, or there's a difficulty to withstand, an earthquake, or a difficulty to withstand any type of collision or stress. So this is a period of time, and I think this is a very positive way also to harness Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, is like creating sturdy structures, creating things which are not going to, be so easily undermined. Because there's an undermining energy here as well, with Mars and Saturn being conjunct in Pisces, as well as the Comet 12P passing over the fixed star of Hamal, as well as Neptune advance in Pisces in the way that it is. The way that Chiron is also pulling the eclipse and Mercury together, there's a feeling of like people really associating the structurally sound also with the justifiable, or with the legitimate, and perhaps the structurally unsound with the passing phase. So the passing phase is seen in the structurally unsound right now, and I think that it's very important to really be open to seeing where there's a structural problem, and being able to talk about this is good. And if you don't feel like you can talk about it, like if you, for example, don't know what to say to that person, or you don't know how to like talk about the problems in your relationship with your partner, or if you feel like in your job you're not allowed to talk about like what's wrong at a structural level in the company or whatever it is. This is very interesting to me. I'm seeing this. I'm having people come to me about this. I'm seeing it in my own life. I'm seeing like there's something that I want to talk about here, but I don't feel like it's going to do well to like bring it up, or I don't feel like it's maybe worth my peace of mind to like be the person pointing out a negative issue. But then also, you know, bridges fall down and, you know, companies go bankrupt and divorces happen. So it's kind of like, which would we rather go through? And I think that a lot of people are maybe having this like crisis of like, you know, being caught between, do we wait for the really negative event, or do we become essentially that kind of, in some cases, antagonist that some people might call it, you know, predicting a negative outcome that hasn't happened yet. So this is kind of like a difficult area of this eclipse. I'm just putting on some essential oil, some peppermint oil to sharpen my mind up and get me through this reading. It's doTERRA, not sponsored. It's one of these like roller, like doTERRA peppermint and coconut oil. It's really nice. That's what I've been doing with Jupiter and Taurus lately because it's really active in my chart opposite my Scorpio stellium. So there's like not that much I can really change, but I can at least have things like that. Anyway, we've gone off topic. doTERRA. Okay. Sponsor me, doTERRA. But yes, again, speaking of Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, that is the most advanced element I feel of this general configuration. The Pisces and Aries energy is kind of like building up a foundation for that. So something can really bloom out during this time. There are new levels of abundance, new levels of prosperity, new levels of creation and generation happening. Something within the AI spectrum as well. I feel with the Uranus and Taurus part and all this eclipse energy, there's something about like the way that we're creating things, the way that we're building and expanding that's going to generate in different ways after this eclipse. And I feel that as we move up through Taurus season, coming, you know, through this eclipse and moving on after it, it's very different the way that we're generating life force energy. Jupiter will go into Gemini in May, late May, and by then for most people it's a lot more airy, lighter of an experience. But for this time, I would recommend praying through the eclipse, okay? I would recommend not making sudden movements that you don't have to make, not trying to cope through inefficient action, not trying to also stress infrastructure that is weak, okay? And I would kind of like build and recharge and rejuvenate through this time as much as possible. And I would prepare for a lot more mobile, ingenious, and somewhat whimsical energy that this eclipse is going to begin generating an external reality that supports that, if that makes sense. So it's like, as we go through this time, as we go through April 8th, maybe it's not totally supportive like what you're envisioning, but the external events are going to adapt more towards these lighter and more appropriate energetic outlets. But yeah, we have to get through it. And there is probably going to be some type of maybe like military resolution, I would say, build up or change happening around the time of the eclipse. And I can't really predict what life is going to be like on the other side of it, but it's very ritualistic, again, with the full picture of what's happening with, again, Comet, Jupiter, rockets, solar eclipse, totality happening in the US as well. So it's like, I don't feel the need to predict, but to the extent that I can, I just feel like we're about to be in a time where we don't have the same goals. We don't have the same motivations either. Again, sign of Aries is about goals and motivation, and it's eclipsing. So it's like removing certain motivations. So it's like, what I will predict is that we'll come through this time and we're going to start to see new motivations happening at every single level that we never anticipated. It's like, wow, completely different goals, completely different motivations, and different ways of also accumulating or reserving energy, different customs, different norms, different regulatory environments as well. As I feel that the Libra side of this eclipse, the South Node in Libra, which is kind of like, I would say, kind of generating all of this hologram right now, that this sort of like cluster buildup on the other side of the chart, I just feel like there's going to be a way that things are like bent into a different shape, or things are reconstructed, or like new bridges are built, for example. And there's going to be like a push for like a greater central cohesion, rather than having such a sort of like uncontrolled, chaotic way that things are generating right now. And to conclude, I would just recommend maybe like making a list of things that you want to like leave in your life, things that you don't want anymore, things that you want to overcome, as it would be a very easy time to kind of like not experience certain things in your life anymore. Because again, the Aries Libra axis is so direct, it's so deliberate, it's so, in some cases, one-sided. So I think that this is a wonderful eclipse for thinking, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not working this job anymore. I'm not eating this anymore. I'm like, it's great for these kind of like small level, kind of obvious changes to make. So anyway, everyone, that's about it. Definitely check out this channel on Patreon. I do weekly forecasts over there. This weekend on Saturday, we'll talk more about this eclipse, and any more insights that I'm getting, we'll cover it as we are about to go straight into it there. And yes, do hit the subscribe button below, hit the thumbs up button to get this video out there, and comment below and let me know what you think of this eclipse. Good luck, and I hope that you enjoy viewing it if you're in an area where it's visible. Much love. Bye.